Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about Liam. Liam was a member who joined the sales consulting program a little over 2 months ago and was able to go from zero, having no experience ever positioning himself as a consultant, doing much sales management or much sales training, into becoming a consultant with 3 different clients in that time, 3 of which he was able to close in a week back to back, which brings him to, I believe, $2,500 in retainers plus $1,000 upfront and a little more money here and there, with one of them even having as high as 30% revenue share with the business owners. That means for every dollar that comes in, 30 cents of it goes to Liam, whether or not he is taking the sales calls. And so in this video, he's going to explain his experience with the program and how he used it, what his biggest breakthroughs were, and more importantly, maybe to inspire you to take the leap of faith as well, to come join us and start your career as a sales consultant. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll see you in the video. Yeah, we've got Liam on today because Liam recently came into the sales consulting program and was able to not only close 1 deal, I think 2, 3, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how many was it that you got over the line?
Yeah, we're at 3 so far and a couple more cooking.
Yeah, it was, just silence, and then a couple messages in the community, and just like that, deals after deals. And so for today, we're going to talk briefly about kind of what his story looked like from kind of pre-sales consulting into sales consulting, and really what comes next. And so, yeah, Liam, I'd say it's been to where were you at prior to sales consulting, kind of within your career setup, things of that nature?
Yeah, so I had a life outside of sales before I got into the high ticket space, right, in the traditional sales world. But when I got into the high ticket side of things, I was working, I think like a lot of people out there, was a closer, going from offer to offer, continuing to jump around.
Right.
I had some really great months, but then also some months where no matter how high and how many deals I closed, there just wasn't the leads. And yeah, man, no, I had the life in traditional sales, and I got into the online space and came in thinking it was going to be one thing, right? Thinking I was going to make $1 million, and no, I'm kidding, make 10, 15, 20 grand every week. And it was going to be all sunshine and rainbows, and it wasn't. Right. I went offer to offer, hopping around, and it kind of got to the point where I was like, I am sick and tired of knowing I can do better marketing and knowing I can do better management, but not in a position to actually make any change. And that's right when you and I linked up, which was, coming up like nearly 3.5 months ago, I think.
That's crazy to think. Time flies. Yeah, I hadn't even realized it had been that long. I think you had found your way into our community, I believe. You were in the closest into consultants, and then just kind of had messaged, and then it's like that, we threw time on the calendar. So, but yeah, no, that's incredible. And so I guess kind of building in that, obviously you kind of had that realization. What was maybe that thing that got you over the edge? Like, do you feel like sales consulting was just that thing that you were immediately open to? Was it something that was kind of like, Pandora's box at first? I'm not sure if I could, or how was it you finding it? And then what actually got you comfortable committing and getting into it?
Yeah. So I think it's a fairly interesting one, right? Like I had been around and I've been part of so many different teams, and I had gotten to see the really good and the really bad of the high ticket space and the online selling culture, right? And been through every wave that you can imagine in terms of great lead flow, terrible lead flow, offers drying up, offers pivoting, I had done it all. And throughout that time, it just made me really feel helpless because I wasn't allowed to make the changes. You know what I mean? Like even to adjust the hours that I wanted to change on, there were some offers that were like, no, you have to close between these hours. You know what I mean? Right. Which is just nuts. And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what? There has to be more. There has to be something where I can use these skills, but have more control and be able to not just make money from my own commissions, my own sales. And I started to look around, and it was funny enough, I was very random, but I had, like you said, been in closers, into consultants for probably about a year, but I had never really looked at the content.
Oh shit, I didn't even know you were in there that long. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ages. And I got a random message in one of my group chats, and they're like, bro, have you checked out the closers into consultant? There's some really cool stuff in there. And I was like, I'm in the group, but no, I've never actually looked at it. So I went in and started devouring some of the free content. And pretty immediately, I think like a day or 2 later, I was like, okay, yeah, Kaleb's got something going on over here. I'm going to hit him up. Right. And I think you and I jumped onto a call pretty shortly after that, and kind of just laid out the ground of like, you made me realize that it's the same of what I knew was going on. Like I knew there was more, but I just didn't know how to go about that.
Right.
And
Bridging
after
the.
talk, yeah, exactly, bridging the gap, right?
Mhm.
It's like I knew there was something more. I knew there was a way to do it, but I just had no way to figure out how.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
it was kind of like plug and play in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 1,000%. Yeah, and I think I remember too, one thing that like we definitely resonated, or I remember we talked about on that call. I think one was like the points of leverage, where it's like the problem is like you can't expect to like solve the problems as a closer if you're just a closer. There's so many things that go beyond you. And then yeah, I think as you talked about, well, am I capable of doing that? Why would someone pay for that skill from me? How would I get them to necessarily trust me? And I was like, well, like look at how much more you've seen compared to them. They don't have any points of reference. You've got all these, data sets from things you've seen, and being able to just kind of take that into a conversation. And sure enough, I'm sure maybe as you've seen, getting the first deal over the line is kind of like the dodgiest one. But once you kind of get the gist of it and like start, you're like, oh, this isn't, it's all in my head. Then you get the second one and the third one. It's like, okay, now it's managing your time, being able to fulfill. So I think after having done that, what was probably your biggest breakthrough, you'd say? I mean, I think you talk about kind of being able to bridge the gap, but what do you feel like was the biggest like breakthrough? And then where are you at now when it comes to your clients and things?
Yeah, for sure. I think just taking a step back from there just for a second, because you said something to me right at the beginning when I was finding my first people and I was like negotiating my first deal. And this one never even ended up going through. We kind of decided to put on a back burner. But it was basically with a non-for-profit that I was going to be doing it with, which was very interesting. And I was like trying to structure the deal in a certain way, and you're like, Liam, like you have to remember like what you're doing is valuable. It doesn't matter who's paying for it, like it's valuable. And that was like a big wake-up call for myself, because I looked at the deal now and it was undercutting myself by at least what I charged someone else 50 to 75%, at least.
Right.
But I was looking at it because I had like that scarcity mindset of, oh, well, I just need to get my first deal. But then after that conversation with you, I was like, no, you know what? I need to stay true to what the value is I know I'm offering. And the right client is going to also see that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. That was a really cool eye-opening moment.
Yeah, that is, and that, yeah, it's incredible that it's great that you bring that up. That is probably a huge one too. It's so easy to underprice what you're familiar with because you're so familiar with it. It's what you know, and it's just like, these are the things that I do. And, we take it for granted. But there are people out there that have no idea where to begin when it comes to like processes and scripting, the training, the management, and yeah, putting it together, coming at a price that feels fair. And so, yeah, no, that's incredible. And then where are you at today? If you're comfortable talking numbers, I'm sure people would always be curious, but like your deals, your setups, what is kind of the lay of the land now?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been fairly interesting. So there's two that I structured with companies. The first one I got, and it's the first deal that I landed. It ended up being a upfront establishment fee plus taking 30% of cash collected front end to be able to hire, run, and build the sales team.
That's incredible.
Okay. And that's on a 12-month contract. We have a 3-month trial period in place, but on a 12-month contract in there, which is
perfect.
Awesome.
It's not like we suggest you do that at all in the program. So yeah, that's great.
So that was the first one, and it was really cool. And then I had a little bit more conversations with yourself, and we talked about what can we do to get some like cash in, what can we do to get some type of retainer as well. So the next deal, I just kind of pivoted my conversation away from just doing overall percentage, and I ended up signing them to where, man, I'm so excited for this offer. It's a sobriety offer. So it's like teaching people how to go like alcohol free.
Hot niche.
Yeah, super. And targeting more like high end people that are working, not high end. What is the word I'm looking for? High functioning. Yeah. Established, high functioning people, right? And ended up landing a deal on that where it's going to be a $2,500 a month retainer plus 7%.
Yeah, pretty good for deal number 2. And these were in like a week's session of each other too, for context.
Correct. Yeah, they were signed and paid within like 5 days.
Yeah, that is killer. And then there's a third one, I believe, or a fourth one, or where do those ones sit?
Yeah. And then it's been just kind of a couple of random backside things, like one that I've never really thought about doing, just like coaching. Do you know what I mean? And do like
Right.
sales coaching because I like to run a whole sales team more. But there was a
Mhm.
guy that was adamant, and he was just like, "Man, I want to get into closing. How can I do it?" And he was just messaging me so much. I was like, "Mate, if you want to do this, I'm going to charge you $1,000, and you're going to get some one-on-ones, and I'll help you get into the industry." And he's just like, "Yeah, done." And he transferred on his credit card like 20 minutes later. It's just like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that was nuts. And then I've also linked in with a few people accidentally because I've been doing so many interviews with people, right? Now that I have a couple of roles, I've been doing so many interviews, hiring staff, and ended up talking to a few offer owners, and they were also like, oh, yeah, if you bring us the right candidate and we hire them, we'll give you 2-3% for their first 90 days as like a finder's fee. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so that got set up.
Yeah.
And then I missed actually, right? Sorry, I didn't even mention the offer that I was closing on, right? I talked to them and I actually negotiated to take that from just a sales position to becoming the sales lead. So I was getting a percentage now overall of the entire team that I was managing.
Wow. So yeah, a renegotiation with an existing offer, a setup plus 30% heavy profit share deal, a nice fixed fee deal, and then kind of like a micro sales coaching offer as well. Those are pretty much like, I think, the core 4 ways you can even go about it. We even have a thing in there that is, it's like sales coaching business, kind of its micro. So yeah, from silence to bam, 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 4 deals over the line, cash in. So that's truly incredible. Yeah, and also too, you were managing all of this while still, I believe you were like, what was this something that you were like shutting yourself in a room and doing a lot of focus, or how many hours of work was it, getting these deals, and what does your schedule look like now that you have them? A lot of people are curious as to how do I fit this into what I'm doing? Do I need to like cut everything else off? How manageable was like actually getting yourself set up, and then what does your schedule look like now with these?
Yeah, for sure. So I started this during a time where I was on vacation in Bali.
Yeah, I remember.
And like, yeah, like literally I was closing 6 to 7 hours a day, right? And then I just made myself like coffee dates basically, where I would meet up with people, whether it's online, just jump onto an appointment with someone that I knew, or someone in person, and just be like, hey, how can I help you? Like, let me like give you free value. And it got to the point where I was doing that a few times just to start the conversations, that people started to ask me, well, how can I pay you? Like, how can this go further than just like 15 minutes of help?
Right.
But no, it was while I was working, I guess, full time in a sense, while I was on holiday. And now the schedule for sure looks a little bit busier, not going to lie.
Right.
And now
Right.
that's probably one of the next tasks is to consolidate my life, but being able to hire the right people. And I mean, that even being said, there's no way I'm working more than 50 hours a week. There would be no way.
Right.
I have a 1-year-old. I was gonna say I have a 1-year-old daughter. You know what I mean? She's my top priority. I spend a lot of time with her. So like, this isn't just some like guy locked in his room 12 hours a day figuring this out. Like, I'm living my life pretty away from work and just doing this maybe 8 hours a day.
Yeah, that's great. And how much different do you feel like this work is compared to when you were just like that standalone sales guy closer?
It feels so refreshing. Like that's the easiest way to say it. I mean, to know that I've actually diversified my income, right? I don't just have one client coming in. I don't even have just one style of deal coming in. You know what I mean? It's really refreshing because it's kind of like when you start something new and you have that honeymoon phase with it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But because it's like I've been in the industry, I've been closing, I've been doing the things behind it, it feels like it's here to stay. It doesn't feel like it's a fad that's coming and going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like it's like I'm always doing work that's interesting to me. I'm always doing something new. I don't have to just be on a call every single day closing deals. I can be structuring a call, putting sequences in place, talking and prospecting, and then jump on and do a sales call. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like one of the, even back to my experience or even what I've observed, it's nice to, when you're higher up in the hierarchy of these, well, what you could call a hierarchy or org chart for these companies, when you're just more aligned with the whatever executive team, you're just no longer a prey animal. You're no longer a victim of circumstance of just like, this is happening, deal with it. This is happening now, deal with it. When you're included in those conversations and are part of those judgment calls and are, the one kind of creating the direction and being able to communicate that to a team. One of the things that I'd found most rewarding is just when you're up there and you get to be the one to tell it to the team. And, as opposed to just maybe what we've experienced, which is just, change of things, it's happening, to be able to actually run like a good culture and a good setup. It's just, as you say, it's refreshing to kind of build the team. I always said it, I got to build the sales team I never got to be a part of, and that's kind of one of the things that was the most rewarding, is just seeing that. So no, that's incredible. Well, what's next? What's over the horizon? What do you see over the future? Signing more deals, doubling down with these, or, what comes next?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, the next side of what I'm going to be doing is, I want to take the clients that I do have and be able to maximize them. Almost thinking of them as case studies in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first paid case studies, get them to a point, but always prospecting, always looking for the next bigger opportunity. One that I didn't even mention. So I started to do building up my social media presence, my personal brand, right? Which has been a huge play. It's been connecting me with some really cool people, and I haven't even done much. I've done like 2 episodes, but the door's just open. But I actually had my first inbound lead. My first inbound lead the other day. It was for an offer. They're doing about £100,000 a month right now. There's 4 setters, there's a closer, and they need a sales manager to come in and basically set up and scale the offer. And it's annoying because it's a UK based offer, and I just don't have the capacity to be up at midnight and work all night. But like having that come in the pipeline, and I'm structuring some type of deal with them still, I'm sure. But having that kind of thing come inbound where they messaged me asking me for my service. Yeah. Mate, I just need to scale that.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's such a, I'm just thinking about it in perspective from, and this was over, once more, 3 months, more or less, right? From 3 months, you were, I believe it was just closing, on vacation. And that was like the end is, well, I'm not going to say the end, but that was what the skill set was. It was just standalone sales guy. 3 months later, a little bit of effort, blending it into the lifestyle, have been able to now turn this into, the foundations of a business where you now have stuff coming inbound to you, work that's more meaningful. I think probably the biggest thing is opportunity, and like you said, diversified income, knowing that you've got people that want to give you money for your value. That's not you being on a phone having to convince people all day of what a product is. Not that, that's fun and it's got its time and its place, but having leverage, truly just leverage over everything. So no, that's incredible. Well, what would you say for anybody who's a skeptic, who's thinking about this right now, is circling on the edge and is, for one reason or another, maybe up in their head, doesn't believe it, and, might think that this whole thing is, but what would you say for skeptics?
I'd say the exact same thing that they would tell their prospects. What happens if you don't do it? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the worst case? How much did you pay for your sales training? I think the statistics, like 6 out of 10 high ticket closers have bought in some type of sales training, right? And they invested at least 5 to 10K on those. You know what I mean? And that's led you to where you are right now. You know what I mean? If you're on the edge, make the leap. Do what you want to do so you can get to where you want to be. It doesn't have to be that way. When me and Kaleb linked up, it was, I wasn't at a great place. I was at a spot where I was like, do I get out of sales? Do I move on?
I think I actually remember that pretty distinctly too, where it was just, it was being a calendar rep on a commission only basis. That's great, but there's no floor to what you're doing. And once more, you've got a family and other responsibilities too, right? There's only so much risk tolerance you can have for, what it is you're trying to build. But that's just my take on it, but I spin it back to you.
Yeah. And it was just like the case of like, man, something had to change. I hit that point of something had to change. And thankfully I came across, yourself and a few other very influential people, and everything lined up to say, well, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you take that bet on yourself? You ask prospects all day long to take a bet on themselves. Why aren't you gonna?
Right. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, sweet. Yeah. You've heard it here, folks. Everybody, this is Liam, a new mentee, going into the Hall of Fame for sales consulting. If you see him, maybe he'll have one of these jumpers on with his initial on it. Once you close a client and have proof of it, we get them made. And yeah, so for anyone who's curious to learn more about this, somewhere around this video, there should be a link to set up a time with myself. And Liam, you also have your own content now. So if you want to plug yourself too for people that want to check out more of your world, go for it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at the Liam Shaw, or you can find me on YouTube at The Closing Authority. That's the podcast.
Sweet. And we'll link those down below in the description too for anybody who wants the direct links. Yeah. Well, with that, Liam, it's been a pleasure. Until the next one, all the best.
100%. See you, mate.